Welcome back then folks to the second build in pack number 17, and of course I teased this one earlier on today for the Porsche 992 generation GT2 RS, which of course isn't really a thing yet on a production scale, but Porsche is testing it, and I've used some of their comments in real life to turn the GT3 RS, which, let's be honest, already has a very GT2 RS kind of vibe with all the crazy aero, plus with the player's livery, which they've done, which I like. It's fairly minimalist, but looks believable for the car, and of course is a nod to the 991 with the colour scheme. They've said that they aim for it to have no more than 100 kilos of extra weight over the GT3 RS, even with the Le Mans derived, or Le Mans inspired at the very least, hybrid boost system, and also that it would have well over 700 horsepower. So for me, when they say well over 700, that sounds like probably somewhere around 740 to 760. So I've aired on the slightly lower end of that with 740 or so, and of course having the 911 Turbo S engine is the perfect swap to build this kind of thing. In terms of the weight, I've used that as a similar kind of rubric to go up against the standard weight. If it's going to be no more than 100 kilos more, I believe if I recall correctly, I've aired more like 50 or 60 kilos more, because with Porsche they do tend to under-promise and over-deliver. So if it ends up being one of those occasions, it will probably be less than 100 kilos more, because they're always better than they claim to be, which is a nice thing to do. As far as performance goes, of course, we'll get into the actual tuning in a second. You do, of course, need the engine swap as well. I already mentioned that. There is no wide body because it's pretty much already got the crazy wide body anyway. As far as the parts, first of all for the sports section, well, if we actually jump into the ultimate section, you want your titanium rods and pistons. To go back to the sports section, we've got the sports mediums, if I recall correctly, already on there, and I've upgraded it just a little bit to sports softs. Some might find that overkill, but, well, it's kind of an overkill car, so that's why I went for it. As far as the club sports section, you've got your power restrictor and ballast. For the semi-racing stuff, I've gone for the low RPM turbo. Part of the reason why I've done that is not only, of course, to get roughly the right amount of power to what I think it could have, but also because, to me, the low RPM gives you that immediate shove out of a corner, which should, hopefully, be quite reminiscent of what the electric boost for this car will probably feel like. So I wanted it to kind of feel authentic, you know. As far as the ECU, that of course is fitted. Likewise with the limited slip diff, I've gone for the semi-racing clutch because it's not a full-on race car at the end of the day. As far as the racing stuff, speaking of which, we do have the air filter, the intercooler, the manifold, pads, and I've gone for the ceramic brakes because, you know, it's a supercar, so it's more that kind of build. As far as the suspension, that is fully customised. Then for the transmission, I actually have gone for the race sequential. Again, I wanted it to feel like it's got that really sharp, aggressive gear change, no lag whatsoever, to sort of mimic, again, that kind of boost system really kicking in. You know, you can only mimic so much, but that's what I've gone for. Like I said, the carbon ceramics, the steering angle adapter as well for even better turning, and of course, I already showed you the ultimate section. So, as you can see, it's not much more than 700 points. So, feasibly, if you put it down to maybe sports hards, you could have yourself potentially quite a good, in fact, maybe a very good 700 point machine. Now, as far as the actual tuning, of course, we'll jump back into the garage to show you what I've done. As far as the visuals, like I said, I'm a big fan of what the player did on this one to keep it fairly understated. You don't have to go for it, obviously, but like I just said, I like what they did. As far as the parts, we've got the sports softs on there for the suspension, 100mm on the ride height. The reason why that's a bit higher than you might expect is because this car is, of course, quite notorious for not reacting too well to having its suspension lowered. It can become very unstable under heavy braking, so avoid that issue completely. It's a little bit lower, I think, if I recall correctly, but not by a crazy amount. The anti-roller's on 5, as you can see, 30 and 40 for the dampers, 3.15 for the springs, little bit of camber, 1.5 on the front, 1 on the rear, no toe on the back, and towed in rather than out on the front, because I really wanted to improve that turn-in and make it more aggressive into corners. Of course, the one thing you do have to be careful of with that is that if you tow in and then really slam on your brakes, it can make the front end kind of veer to the left or the right on some cars. On this one, it's not too much of a problem, but if you do find it to be, that will probably be the cause. So if you reduce that toe a little bit, it should get rid of that altogether. As far as the diff, 555, so pretty simple one on that one. As far as the auto setting for the transmission, I've gone for 380 kilometers an hour. Who knows what the real ratios will be, but that should at the very least give you pretty much more than enough top-end performance for most tracks. You could always adjust it though if you want to. As far as the ballast, like I said, I wanted it about, say, 50-60 kilos more than the standard car. car. The turbo engine makes it about 10 kilos heavier anyway, and then I've added the extra 50 to make it 1510, because the other one is 1450. So it could, in real life, weigh as much as 1550, but like I said, with Porsche being Porsche, I think they'll probably over-deliver on that and be less. It could be like maybe 1530, perhaps, but we'll have to wait and see. We can have a bit of fun with it either way. As far as the power, that is non-adjusted. 743 sounds pretty accurate to me. We'll have to wait and see. Downforce is already on there and you can't adjust it. And for all the rest, well, what we did is right there. And apparently they are aiming, I think, I recall reading somewhere, to have the same kind of weight split of a 3961, which is why I've gone for that as well. So that is hence the adjustment there of the 30% towards the rear. So with all of that done, a very speculative build rather than a replica. Now of course we'll jump out to the Nordschleife, because of course to show you what the car can do in practice. Now when I did the other GT2 RS build, I seem to recall it being a bit of a challenging car. I can't remember now because it was quite some time ago. It was nevertheless very quick. This one is even quicker, but it's also pretty damn forgiving. You can use the active wing if you want to, but to be fair, even if you don't bother, it's already so quick through corners, and that extra boost of power makes a massive difference on this car. It's tremendously fast. The turbo engine makes it even more fun. It's one of those cars where there's not a huge amount to say, just give it a try, jump out on the track, and have fun with it. So if you do decide to use the build, you could definitely use this for career mode stuff, maybe online, or even just for fun, and it will be interesting to maybe look back in future when the real car comes out and see how close I was to not only how the car performs, but even just the on-paper spec. That's it for this build though. Of course, check out the Beamer earlier on today, and of course the other 8 coming out for the rest of the week. And for now, thanks for watching.